Hand mixing concrete as a DIYer and a self-builder. You don't need to look like this. If a skinny city boy like me can do it, so can you. After you've watched this video and seen how easy using a mixer for your concrete is to do, not to mention how cheap, a world of possibilities will open up, from extensions to garden rooms to steps and paths, and all you need is a little cement mixer like this, hire or buy, and these few tools which will last you forever. I'll show you what to buy from the local store, how to get your quantities, a super easy and foolproof old school mixing method. I'll show you what to look for in the soil and what depths to consider. Let's start with what you need to make your concrete. I only need 2 ingredients. That's these 25 kilogram bags of cement and these bags of ballast. Ballast is just a fancy word for aggregate and sharp sand that have been mixed together. Weight can vary between 25 and 35 kilos due to the moisture content, and that's probably why they never print the weight on the bag. You can also buy ballast in these ton bags, sometimes called bulk bags, but I'll avoid them on these small builds, even though they're a bit cheaper. Big bags require a fair bit of gauging with your shovel, which requires a bit more skill and a bit more time. You can, of course, use separate bags of aggregate and sharp sand, and again you'll save yourself a little bit of cash, but it's a load more work for a tiny gain. Not worth it for small jobs such as ours. Check out my video here if you want to know more about these options. I'll stick with the small bags of ballast, even though it's marginally more expensive, but there's another reason why I love the bags. And to explain why, let's first talk about mixing. You can, of course, mix concrete with a shovel in a wheelbarrow, and if I was doing something really small like this little concrete step, then that's exactly what I'd do. For anything bigger, you need to think about your poor back and the time it takes when mixing the ballast in the wheelbarrow. It's not worth it, don't do it. Use a cement mixer. We also call it a concrete mixer. If you have the space to store it, it's invaluable for casting steps, mini piles, fence posts, anything around the house and garden that needs some solid strength to it, in fact. And if you don't want to store it, it's super cheap to hire for a day or two. You will, of course, need a decent wheelbarrow to pour your mix into, like I'm doing here. Make sure to choose a wheelbarrow with these puncture-proof tyres. This type of work kills old-fashioned pneumatic wheels, and this wheelbarrow is a self-assembled one that can be delivered to your door. And I'll avoid a painted wheelbarrow. Go for a bare finish, galvanised or stainless steel. There are 2 types of mixer, petrol and electric, and weighing up the pros and cons of each for a self-builder and DIYer doing the occasional mix. An electric mixer such as this will do the job admirably, provided you have access to a power outlet which has at least a 32 milliamp breaker at your consumer unit. I'll leave a link in the description for my review of the best cement mixer for creating this type of concrete, along with links to all the tools I'm using for this concrete work. You'll need a real extension cable, not a bargain basement one from your local pound store. It needs to have an IP rating and its own cutoff. I like this cable, brightly coloured, so I can see it on the ground, decent length. It's got a safety cutoff and at least 2 outlets at the terminal. Make sure it has an IP rating. An outdoor cable is not the same as a waterproof cable. You're working in damp conditions where you'll be splashing water around near an electrical appliance. Be safe. Back to our mixing. Why am I focusing on electric mixers? Well, the problem with petrol mixers is the hassle of 2-stroke engines, getting the oil, gasoline, petrol, mixing it, pouring it with a funnel, it leaking into your garage over time, and the maintenance required of the engine and starter. If you're not doing it day in and day out, you'll spend ages remembering how to set it up the thing and get it going before you start your job. There's a load of advantages with petrol mixers, of course, if you're on a site whether it's 110 volts or if there's no power close by, if you need a bigger capacity, but that's not going to be us most of the time. Petrol mixers tend to have more power and therefore bigger barrels, which means more volume. Look for the number of litres on the listing. Again, not a big deal for the self-builder. Using the method I'm going to show you, most of the electric motor mixers have a capacity of about 100 litres, and for the size of projects and pours you and me are going to be doing, that's going to be more than plenty. I've used bell mixers, they're reliable and easy to get hold of. I've used this one from Toolstation, but I'm going to be using this one today because it is about the same price as the Bell electric mixers, but it's got a 500 watt motor. The last thing I want is my mixer burning out on me in the middle of a pour. I like to have a wide shovel, and for post holes and mini piles, a Grafter shovel. I need a bucket. This one is 14 litres, which is the perfect volume for the water I need, as I'm going to show you. And we need a hose reel. Get a freestanding one that allows for free reeling. This one here from Hoselock is reinforced and a bright colour to help us see it and avoid squashing it in the messy environment of mixing concrete. You need an adjustable cut-off spray head. I'll buy a connection kit, as they do come in handy for quick attachments. And if you're using most of the length of the hose, take your time reeling it back in by getting it lying straight and pointing at the reel, and you'll avoid the twists, otherwise it gets harder each time to unroll it. So what do we need to buy for our concrete, and how much do we need? We figure out the number of bags of cement to buy by working out the volume of the foundation, which is the cube of the concrete. Volume is area in plan times depth of trench. For a bigger job, maybe a deeper strip foundation with reinforcement, I'll work it out like this, using this simple formula for our school days. But here I'm using these mini concrete pile foundations to support this timber framed and micro house I'm building. I'll cover that in some other videos if you want to subscribe to see that. And I'm going to cover every single aspect of home construction for the self-builder through all the trades using this tiny house. I have a total of 32 holes, 250 millimeters in diameter approximately by 600 deep. I've previously used steel tubes and I've resin bolted brackets to support the superstructure level, which I had engineered for me some years ago. But for self-build, I'll use this rod system, which Oakwood Garden Rooms have developed on their channel. The rod system isn't cheap. Don't shortcut it, and make sure you stick to the correct diameter of threaded bar. This is a great system for the DIYer to get the levels perfect without expensive laser kits, so I'm using them here. Here's the volume calculation, and here's my spreadsheet for quantifying the concrete, if you do want it to do it the posh way, and which you can download in the link below, which helps you calculate it based on the strength you need for your particular application. But if you just want to get on with it, I'll give you my old school method, what I use when I'm on the tools, and you can just use the spreadsheet as a double check if you want. I'll work as follows: idiot-proof method with next to no measuring. Water first. These buckets hold the perfect amount, 14 litres. Fill it up to the mark using our hose. We need around 1 bucket full for each batch. Note I'm saying around. Concrete mixing depends on the moisture content and the weather and a whole lot of other stuff, so we're going to use our eyes as we mix. Using our hose, first make sure there's no dust or rust particles in our mixer by hosing clean and brushing the internal barrel. I'll throw about 1/3 of a bucket of water into the mixer, maybe half actually. Switch the power mixer on, get the water swirling around. Don't rush this bit. Take your time to cut the top of the bags in a horizontal line, clean off, and using these builder's scissors helps. This is really important to avoid the lips of the bag catching as you pour the content into the mixer. If you use your work knife and rush it, more likely you'll get areas for the particles to catch on as you pour these heavy bags into the drum, and it will go everywhere. I'll have 3 bags of ballast stacked with 1 bag of cement. I'll cut them all neatly before anything else. I'll lift my first bag of ballast, and if I'm alone, one hand under the base and one hand gripping the open sides, but best to get someone to help you if you can. Continuing by pouring the 3 bags of ballast into the drum, letting each one first settle into the water, and then add the rest of the water in. And holding the bag of cement, I'll put half in, let the drum turn a bit, pouring any remaining water in from the bucket, which kills the powder, and then the remaining cement, and I'll perhaps squirt a little bit of water in at the end with my hose to get the slightly creamy mix that I'm looking for. Because the moisture content of the ballast varies, you just need to eyeball it. It's intuitive and you'll know, trust me. Now, 3 bags of ballast to 1 bag of cement. This is a pretty strong mix between a 4:1 and a 3:1. M20 to M25, maybe M30 design strength, and that's jargon of how we measure concrete. Stronger than you might need for some simple footings or slab work, but I don't care. The materials are super cheap and I'm not wasting any time. I can get a full barrel load of super strong mix without any measuring or thinking. I'm not wasting time with gauging, measuring water or counting shovelfuls. Really simple and foolproof, right? Leave this mix rotating in the barrel for about 5 to 10 minutes and then get your wheelbarrow facing it, making sure your mixer is standing secure and level. Tip the barrel using the 2 levers and pour into the wheelbarrow. And top tip, if you're working alone, once you've poured the wheelbarrow mix, leave the barrow starting with the concrete and pour in the next batch. Leave it mixing for those 5 to 10 minutes, and rather than standing around waiting, you use that time to shovel the concrete you've poured into the wheelbarrow into your trenches. And for these mini piles, I'll use my Grafter shovel for this. And I've been using this 3 bags to 1 bag system for years, and it's never failed me. Do check the soil each time, of course, before you start by digging a trial pit. I'm hoping there's boulder clay within about 200 millimeters of the top of my hole. You can tell boulder clay as you see the bits of yellow powder sticking in and around the stones. It's where ground can take loadings, such as a new building, without any movement. If it's just loose topsoil, I'll go deeper with my hole. I want an absolute minimum of 400 to 500 millimeter depth of boulder clay. That encloses my foundations for a mini pile. For a strip foundation, the minimum would be this. The whole process of experimenting and beginning to understand your soil conditions and the process of creating your concrete is actually pretty intuitive. Even for novices, it's harder to describe actually. So just do it, since it's so rewarding and it does open up a world of possibilities for the self-builder. My 32 holes equates to just under a cube of concrete. Myself and my buddy did the whole lot in 2 shifts of 2 hours, excluding cleaning up time. It was about 10 of these mixes. So 30 ballast bags and 10 cement bags will make me approximately a cube of concrete at around M25 strength. Order a bit more just in case of waste. When the cement bags puncture, for example, if they're sitting outside, they'll go off. Here's the overall cost of the materials for this project. If you want to get the spreadsheet for this job with the costs, with all the tools listed, I'll leave links for you to download in the description. As a comparison for a strip foundation, this one was about this cube, hand mixed in 1 long day with rebar and mesh reinforcement, all prepared the day before. You can of course just go with a ready mix truck delivery. I've made a video about it here and the pros and cons, but there's a minimum quantity for ready mix. You've got to be exact with your time slot, looking into the future when you'll often underestimate your time to get your trenches ready. Also, more often than not, I don't have easy access. For example, on this job, hand mixing is the only way. Ready mix is always going to be cheaper and use less time. Please give me a thumbs up and enjoy making your concrete in this foolproof way.